Good afternoon. You are listening to Rushton and Baker on talkSPORT between now and 4. Time now for a transfer update with Intuit QuickBooks.
Transfer window. Breaking news on talkSPORT with Intuit QuickBooks. Tackle your self-assessment with Intuit QuickBooks. Search QuickBooks to find out more.
Our football correspondent Alex Crook is here. Hey, Crookie.
Hello, Crookie.
Good afternoon, boys.
Afternoon.
So where should we start? Solskjaer to Man United?
Yeah, probably not something that any of us thought we'd be discussing this time last week, but that does seem to be the way it's heading. Obviously, Manchester United have a massive game away at Burnley live on talkSPORT tonight. We know that Darren Fletcher will be in the dugout for that one. We know there have been advanced talks with Solskjaer. They've sounded out Michael Carrick and Ruud van Nistelrooy as well, but it does seem Solskjaer in the box seat, and I wonder if there might be a role for Michael Carrick coming back to the club as well. But this really is back to the future as far as Manchester United are concerned. Carrick actually replaced Solskjaer for his interim stint after Solskjaer was sacked after 3 years in charge. So, listen, I sort of understand why waiting until the summer brings a bigger pool of managers for United, the likes of Thomas Tuchel, Mauricio Pochettino, Oliver Glasner, potentially at Palace as well. But I'm fascinated to see how this worked out, because obviously Ollie came in, replaced Jose Mourinho, did give the supporters and the dressing room a lift initially, but it didn't end very well. I was at Watford when United got battered at Vicarage Road, and the reaction to Solskjaer and his players at full time was one of toxicity. So let's see how this works out.
Didn't he go on like a record-breaking unbeaten run or something when he was there last time?
Yeah, he had a really good start, culminating in that brilliant win in Paris. But you have to look at it. It was quite a kind set of fixtures that he had during his interim spell. And even that PSG game, if you go back, I think that was one where Marcus Rashford scored the penalty. It was a shot that was going miles into stands.
Yes,
that hit one of the PSG players on the hand, which wasn't really a handball. And that was when Rio Ferdinand went on television and said, give him a 10-year contract. And well, the board reacted, didn't they? Listen, I love Ollie as a player. He'll always be a Manchester United hero for what he did in that treble-winning season, and most notably in the Champions League final. But I don't know.
How much DNA is too much DNA? That's the question. Look, it's interesting for players who weren't, in Amarim's plans, who may now be interested. Kobbie Mainoo, of course, is always a headline.
Yeah, he's a big one. And listen, I do think it is a coincidence that he's possibly back in the squad tonight. We know he's been back training on the grass, but I still think had Ruben Amorim have remained in charge, then he was looking to leave the club this month. We know there's interest from Napoli, where the United old boys go and revive their career. The likes of Scott McTominay and Rasmus Højlund have done very well over there. But I think now that Ruben Amorim has gone, we know that the board didn't want to sanction a permanent deal because they still see Kobbie Mainoo as a big part of their future. So I think he will stay, and I think he will be given game time now, whoever is in charge.
Elsewhere, Bournemouth play Spurs tonight. Antoine Semenyo, annoyingly for me, is going to play for Bournemouth. It's quite interesting, to play games before, you make a big move like this.
Don't get injured.
It is. And actually, if you go back to the summer, we spent a lot of time during that transfer window talking about Alexander Isak, the fact he was AWOL from Newcastle's training ground. Then Johan Wissa was not training as well because he was trying to force for a move. Antoine Semenyo has done the complete opposite. He gave Bournemouth his word, as I understand it, that he would keep on playing until such time as his release clause came into being and was activated, as it has been by Manchester City. He's got a medical there tomorrow. The clause expires on January the 10th, so that deal will get done, and this will be the end of what's been a long farewell for Antoine Semenyo. I think the most impressive element for me is that he was on 4 yellow cards and walking that tightrope, knowing that one more booking would lead to a suspension, and he's made sure that hasn't happened, even though probably it would have been easier for him to be watching from the stands and therefore not having the risk of injuries. He's a terrific professional, great character, and I hope for his sake he does really well at Manchester City.
West Ham looking to sell goalkeeper Mads Hermansen. I felt sorry for him. I like Alphonse Areola. I think he's really, really good goalkeeper. I think he played great last night. Yes, he punched someone in the head, but that used to be okay because they didn't used to do VAR it. You'd be like, oh, well, he caught him with one. The game's gone, Alex, don't you think?
Well, it certainly wasn't a penalty for me, but I'm not as convinced as you by Alphonse Areola's goalkeeping skills, I have to say.
He's also on this French property programme that I like to watch. This family, this family of estate agents, and they sell really nice property in Paris and around France. But there's a episode where they're in London, and it's Areola's family, and he's looking for I think it's 6 beds for 7 million. And it's a good episode. So maybe I like him because of that more than his goalkeeping.
To be honest, I like, for every million I spend, I like to get a bedroom. So I'm not interested.
Anyway, I bet you've warmed the cockles of those West Ham fans' hearts.
They'll be thrilled with that. Maybe they could go and watch that episode just to. Anyway, sorry, carry on. Mads Hermansen, a man I've only just heard of in the last 1 minute when I read his name.
Yeah. This is another story in the transfer notebook this week. He was signed because Graham Potter wanted him and wanted a new goalkeeper. He played 4 games in the Premier League. He let in 14 goals before he was dropped, and obviously Graham Potter was sacked soon after. They're looking at a Brazilian goalkeeper. He's playing over in Saudi with Al Nassr, Bento, and I think if he comes in, then Mads Hermansen, just 5 months after they paid £15 million to take him from Leicester, will be allowed to move. I think it's a really interesting transfer window for West Ham. They've signed a couple of strikers already, which suggests they are backing Nuno Espirito Santo, but I keep hearing rumours that his job is in real jeopardy because they barely won a game since he came in. Callum Wilson, as a result of those 2 strikers coming in, wants to tear up his contract and go and play for somebody else. They're looking at Charlie Cresswell, England under-21 defender playing over in France. So that they're doing their best to give whoever is in charge the funds to mount some kind of survival act. But a lot of West Ham fans that I'm talking to think they should be saving the money because they're already doomed to the Championship. And if you're paying £26 million to bring a striker in Castellano from Serie A, what are you going to do with him when you are in the second tier?
Quick one on Spurs. They made an offer for, is it a left-back, Sousa from Santos? Are they going to get a midfielder who can pass it forwards, Crookie? Ideally before 7:30 tonight.
Well, they were expected to be one of the busier clubs in this transfer window, but at the moment it's just Brennan Johnson obviously going out to Crystal Palace, which leaves them a bit short actually because Kudus is injured and Johnson probably would have played tonight. So I did wonder about the wisdom of that departure at the time, bearing in mind he was the top goal scorer last season. But yeah, Sousa, 19-year-old left back from Santos. They had one offer of £8 million rejected. talkSPORT can exclusively report that they put a second bid in of €15 million. The player is keen to make the move, but this feels very much like one for the future as opposed to the here and now. And if you're Thomas Frank, who obviously isn't the darling of the Tottenham fans, shall we say, I think he would want a few more proven players to come in. And João Paulinho is fascinating because obviously he's on loan. I think a few weeks ago it was pretty much a given that Spurs were going to activate the £26 million option to make that loan from Bayern Munich permanent. I'm just hearing a few whispers now. Maybe they're not so keen, and Fulham, actually, his former club, are waiting in the wings.
Interesting. Thanks, Crookie. Have a good day.
You, Crookie.
Cheers, boys.
Alex Crook there. Yes. How many million and how many bedrooms? That's a good question, isn't it? Max and Charlie with you until 4. And we'll have the sports headlines next.